Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trading Setup channel. Um, we hope in this channel to bring you guys some strategies, some tips and tricks, and just teach you guys in general how to trade and how to trade the correct way. Today we're going to have a look at technical drawings. We're going to have a look and see how technical drawings can enhance whatever strategies we are using. And if used correctly, it could give us a little bit of an edge in accuracy and getting trades right. The idea behind technical drawings is just to identify places of, or rather areas of interest where we can expect to find high probability trades. And we're going to have a look at that in a second. First of all, I do apologize if there's a little bit of a background noise. Unfortunately, we're running on generators at the moment. So apologies if anybody can hear that. And secondly, apologies for starting the stream late. We did have some internet issues as well. And but yeah, we're back. We're up. Let's see how things are going, and let's have a look. Let's head on over to the charts, and we're going to have a look and see how we can draw technical drawings the correct way and how it can help us. Okay, so guys, I've got Euro USD open here. This is on a 1 minute chart, and we're going to look specifically today at support and resistance areas, and we're also going to have a look at channels. These are my two favorite technical drawings to use, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly for now remove this from my chart so we can have a nice clean chart. Technical drawings, like I said, is going to give us areas of interest where we can expect high probability trades, but this is a supplement to whatever strategy we are using, and we're going to look at have a look in a minute at a few different strategies, and our technical drawings will give us a little bit of an edge with these strategies. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is just your normal support and resistance areas. Okay, and for this we're going to just use a little bit of historical data just so I can give you guys an example of how we can use this. We're going to start here. This is basically right around the time of the UK Open this morning. And as we can see here, price, this was an area that price got rejected from. So let's quickly draw in, okay, let me just delete. So what we're going to do is we're just going to draw in a horizontal line, and we're going to have a look and see this area got hit 3 times. We're going to ignore the price afterwards. We're just going to look at this because let's assume that we were in this area here. And we noticed that we have this fairly decent support area. So what happens is, let's scroll on a bit and see what happened here. Okay, so we can see that price broke through eventually, and look how many times this has been retested afterwards. One of the very beautiful things of technical drawings, and this is valid for support and resistance lines, and it's valid for trend lines or channels even. When price gets rejected of a level like it was here, usually when it breaks through, it will come back for a retest. Right, so we can expect price to come back up and retest this area. Okay, so this was a beautiful example of how a retest fails or failed. This will not happen every time. We need to, we cannot assume that if price does go through a support area or a resistance area or a trend line, we cannot assume that price will come back for a retest and it will retest and then continue in the direction that it broke. Oftentimes you will see that this is not the case. But we do know that it happens, and it happens often. So what we can do is then look at our whatever strategy it is that we are using, and we can identify and see if the retest is going to hold or not. In this case here, we had an example. We actually had two examples of hidden bearish divergence. If we look at the stochastic, when price did the first retrace, we can see that the stochastic made a little bump here. And when it did the second retest and failed, we did get a higher, the stochastic made a little bit of a higher high before it turned down, but price did not make a higher high. So that's hidden bearish divergence, which is a continuation signal. And then this would be a sell trade for us. Now, if you took a sell trade here, at the moment it formed, if you took a 1 minute or even a 5-minute trade, you would have been good. And immediately afterwards, again, we had the bearish divergence again. Excuse me, and that was just below the resistance area. So it gives us areas to, like I said, technical support and resistance areas or trend lines or channels will show us areas when price does break through. For example, we know we need to pay attention for the next short while because we know that usually or often it will retrace. We cannot use this by itself though. Okay, so it's a bit dodgy to use by itself because quite oftentimes you will see price come through and then just go back straight back up again. But usually when this happens, you will not get an entry signal from your strategy. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. It's super, super easy. And we can see also that this line remained valid for quite some time. We even retested it a few minutes ago. Okay, so if we have a look here, we had a small retest and we did get a buy signal as well because we had the here, and our oscillator made a new low, a lower low than the previous one, but price did not. So that's that was a little bit of hidden bullish divergence, and we could have taken a trade off the support line. And once it got rejected and it closed, we could have taken a trade. Usually if you get an entry on the support lines or resistance or trend lines or channels, you want to take your position as close to the line as possible if you get a valid entry, right? So we're not going to rush, or we never rush our trades. We never force trades. If the trade isn't there, don't see it for what you want it to be, but instead just see it for what it is. If you get an entry, play it. If you don't get an entry, simply don't play it. Okay, so this gives you an idea of how we can use support and resistance areas. Again, also, this works the same for resistance areas. So let's draw this in, and we're just going to change the color to red. Red for down, green for up. Makes it easy to identify. We had two taps here, and we can leave this here for a while and see what happens if price does go up. If this area does hold, we should see some action around here. And with action, I mean we might get price to move upwards, make a big spike, where we might get a DI spike that we can put in reverse, or it can break and we can get a retrace back to the support line, which when a resistance line is broken, it becomes a support line, and vice versa. So when it does go through and it comes back, if we get hidden divergence, in this case it will be bullish, we can take a buy. We can take that as a buy signal, and then take a trade when it hits, when it comes back to the support area, and if we do get a signal. Like here would be a this is probably going to be a buy for me. I'm just going to wait and see if the RSI here stays. As long as price stays above this line here and the RSI gets rejected and comes back up over the 50 line, that's telling me, remember the RSI is a momentum indicator, and that's going to tell me that the upwards momentum is still being maintained, although price is resting a bit. Unfortunately, at the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So it looks like we're going to be heading down. But that's, like I said, it's no strategy or no tool will ever be a rule. It's just something to assist you. I did not get any entries at the right here from any of my strategies, so this will not be an area where I'm taking a trade. But this should explain fairly beautifully the way that we can look at support and resistance areas and use them to enhance our strategies and just get a little bit higher probability entries. Okay, so let's get rid of this, and let's have a look at trend lines. Okay, so trend lines act the same as a support and resistance line would, but the only difference is, let's just move this to the side here for quickly. We're just going to make that a bit bigger. So the thing with trend lines is that we're going to use them in on highs and lows. So the question is always, how do we know where to draw our trend lines? The answer to that is quite simple. Let's see if I can find a very, very nice example of where the trend changed. Okay, not a lot of movement there. Okay, so let's stick with the example that's here currently, and we pretend like we're drawing. So what will happen is, when we move in a downwards direction, okay, and the opposite will be true for upwards directions, but let's have a look at the downward directions. The definition of a trend, if we're looking at a downward trend, we want to see lower highs and lower lows in the trend. If we're looking at an upwards trend, we're looking at higher highs and higher lows. When price is moving downwards, we're expecting to see lower lows every time, right? So price never moves in a straight line. As you guys can see here, we made some lows, get some pushback, made some lows, get some pushback, low, pushback, low. Okay, so it's constantly forming troughs and peaks. We refer to the top here. If price makes a high, we refer to that as a peak, and if it's this area here will be a trough. So price will always be making peaks and troughs while it's moving in a direction. But once we start making, we were in a small downwards trend here. So once price starts turning, once we start seeing higher highs and higher lows, we know that the direction is probably changing. Doesn't mean it's going to change for a long time, but at least temporarily price is moving upwards again. And this is exactly what happened here. So what we want to do with trend lines is we're going to wait for the low. This would be the low here from the downwards movement. And then we're going to look for the retracement. This will be our new retracement here, because price, if you look at this, at the way price moved here, we came up and this was a down, and now we're moving up again. So what we want to do is we want to put the trend line on our last low, the last low we had in the previous trend, which in the bearish trend, and we're going to put it right there on the current low that it's forming, the higher low that it's formed. Okay, so this is telling me that price is moving upwards. Quite often what I like to do is I love channels. Channels tend to work out super beautifully. So what we're going to do is just draw a line parallel to it, and then we're going to put that line on the first high that formed, and this will be this area here. So I'm going to put it right there, and this is why we call it a channel. We do have an upwards moving channel at the moment. Interesting. What's interesting is that quite often what would happen is that while price is going to move up now, and very often I will get an entry here. It will often go to the opposite side of the channel, not always. Okay, so sometimes you will be looking at a channel and price will maybe go up to here and then just turns back and just keeps running downwards. Okay, so this is the reason like I said earlier, we are definitely not going to play blindly. We're not going to assume that if price touches a trend line that we drew, that it's going to turn back. So we are definitely not going to be taking trades blindly. But we know that oftentimes it will go for the opposite side of the channel, and it will oftentimes turn down from that point. What we need to figure out though is when this happens, do we have an entry from whatever strategy it is that we're using? If we do have an entry, we can quite confidently take that entry. But it doesn't mean we're definitely not just taking blind trades. Whoops, I did not want to do that. I clicked on the wrong thing. And we are also seeing, let's make this 2 and we make this red. What we have here is what we just looked at, and we have price forming a hitting a resistance area there. So it's another thing we need to keep an eye on. We might get a turn down here, but nothing on my charts is telling me that it is going to turn down immediately. So I'm just going to sit and wait and watch. We can, if we do break upwards, we can say that we are moving in a channel. If it does reject here, we can actually say that price is caught up in a triangle. There's a lot of different shapes that we can that you'll see. If you use this often, you will see that quite often people will talk of flags and triangles, stuff like that. Flag, this would be like an example of a flag, and I'll show you guys something interesting about a flag just now as well. I just want to see, before I get sidetracked with flags and triangles, I just want to see if this pushes up, we might get an actual decent trade here. Okay, but anyway, let's draw the flag in quickly. So what would happen often? Let's make you 3 again. We make you, let's make you, let's make that cyan. A flag is a very interesting thing in the sense that what happens is that when price changes direction, or when price is in a very strong trend, we will very often see price stop for a while. And this will be an example of where this happened. And you guys will notice that this is just a mini channel that was drawn in, that we draw in there. This is basically the same as the green channel we just drew here, but this always happens in a very small area where once price has changed direction, usually it will, this is seen as a resting area. So quite often when it does break through, we can expect at least, I think the rule is half at least of what it's moved before. So as you can see here, price turned around in this area there, and we moved. It rested, formed a channel, moved beautifully within that channel. We're getting the movement here now. So what I want to see, I'll come back to this in just a second. What I want to see here is another beautiful green candle right now that goes up to my channel, top of my channel, because then I might get the ADX spike on the, or the DI spike on the ADX, which could tell me there's a sharp movement, but with no real momentum or momentum behind it or strength behind it. At the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. There we go. Let's take a trade on that. We're just going to take a 1-minute sell here on the line and see what happens. We do have the ADX high-ish, not quite ideal, but this should be a pullback for us. This is a very, very beautifully formed channel. We can actually move that down. And the fact that it was playing from here, it gives me kind of quite a lot of confidence that it will, at least for a short term. It doesn't mean we're going to turn down, but this should be a decent sell trade right here. We got 20 seconds left there. Let's see what happens. but it should be fine. There we go. Okay, and this is exactly how we can use technical drawings, channels, and support and resistance areas to enhance our trading strategies. It's just like a supplement, but it's once you get comfortable and get the hang of drawing, especially, like I said, especially I love channels because price so often forms channels. And once a channel is established and it's adhered to, price tends to run in it. So quite often times you will get very nice trades. I'm so tempted to take a buy trade here. The reason I'm taking a buy is because we are in upwards movement. This is identified as a support area, but I also have my stochastic very, very high here. Okay, my stochastic is still very high, and my RSI is also still above the 80 line or the half line, which is telling me the bullish momentum is holding. I should have maybe waited to see if this gets rejected. And jumping the gun doesn't always pay off. It's always better to wait for proper entries. This is probably going to be the trade, yeah. Because I think on the next, this is going to push up, and not in time for me to win this, but this should push up from here, and I should get a rejection of the RSI line. I rushed this. Okay, so I'm losing this one, but it's fine. I did rush it a little bit. I suspect it's going to go for this. While we wait and see if it's going to hit here, let's just have a look at this flag quick. So we had the movement down. We had this resting area form. Small little channel, we can draw it like that as well. But very important to note that price was moving inside this for the whole time. Okay, so we're not looking, if it doesn't do this, it's not a correction. It's only a correction. So it takes some practice to identify these. This is an example of just a correction, right? This movement here is just a correction. We're not going to look, we're not going to think of this as the same as this area here. Okay, very important to distinguish, but this is something that you guys will, with experience and with practice, you will learn to recognize this quite often, or quite easy. At the moment, this might look a bit, strange, but just practice it. You don't need to trade something to practice it. You can just, when you're sitting in front of the charts and you're using whatever strategy it is that you are using, just keep an eye out for movements like this and see, and practice drawing a little bit of trend lines, a little bit of, try to identify support and resistance areas. Like for example, this area here that I drew in is now void for me. Okay, because it did not, price did not stick to it. This was just, is being broken left and right now. So it's no longer a valid trend line for me, or a valid support area. So now I'm taking it off, and I'm just going to wait and see what price does. I do still think we're going to move up here though. My RSI is rejecting off the middle line. We are in upwards movement, but let's give it a second. Okay, so we have the example here of a bearish flag. Let's see if we can find one where, let's see if we can find one in any upwards momentum, or in an upwards move as well. Euro has been tanking. We have the US elections to thank for this. The dollar has been strengthening a lot this week. Okay, let's go back to there. Let's see what the pound is doing. Not the nicest of movement. By the way, I'm using a 1 minute chart here today, but this it works on all time frames, right? I use this on 10 seconds. I use this on 1 hour and 4 hour charts to identify areas of interest for me. Another thing I really want to show you guys is how often, personally, I actually like using 2 time frames to draw on. Those of you guys that's been watching my previous videos and stuff will know that I have a fondness for 10-second charts. So usually I'm watching 10-second charts, but what I'll do is I'll go to a 1 minute or a 5 minute chart, and then draw my trend lines and support areas on the higher time frame, higher than the time frame that I'm actually trading. So I put a horizontal line here now, and I'm going to pop over to 10 seconds quickly, and let's look at this area. What do we see? We had bearish divergence here. So price made this high, and when it made the next high just below the top channel line, I suppose, we had both my stochastic and my RSI made lower lows compared to the previous one. That's bearish divergence, so that's a trade for me. Okay, so I really like using different time frames. I draw my trend lines on higher time frames, or my support areas, stuff like that, channels. I usually draw on 1 or 5 minutes, and then I'll just keep an eye on it, because if I switch back, it looks like this. So when I do switch back to a lower time frame, no, I want to delete that. I find that quite often I will get entries on my lower time frame that's right on the support or resistance areas, and then it makes it easier for me to time my entries. But that's just something I love doing. So yeah, it's just the important thing is to understand how to draw your trend lines. A lot of people will just take random peaks and just start drawing lines, and there is a correct and a wrong way to do this. And like I said, the correct way would be, if you're in a downwards move, you use your last low in the move. So this will, as you guys can see, maybe I should just draw in a channel here. Let's use this. Okay, so this was our downwards move. Yeah. Let me just make this parallel, because it should be a decent channel. There we go. Okay, so this was our move here, this downwards move here. And this was the last low in this downwards move, because this was only after this last low was where we broke out of the downwards direction and started moving up again. Okay, so this will be your entry point, your first point for a upwards channel, or even just a trend line for now. And then your first low will usually be your second point, your first higher low. And sometimes you'll have to adjust them, because it'll form, I want to say, sloppily. And then after when a new low has formed, a new higher low has formed, you will see that, oh, if I draw it like this, it makes a lot more sense if you like just shift the channel just a little bit. So that happens. None of these are set in stone. It's not a law that needs to be that will always be adhered to, but it does give us an idea, just that little bit of an edge, or areas where we know we need to pay a little bit more attention. Another thing that, if you guys notice this, when I drew this in, I used the low here, and I used the low here, and I drew this line up here. Then I made a clone of it and basically built a channel up here. So this happened before price reached this area here, and it adhered to the channel. Okay, so this is a way to identify areas where you could get trades long before price hits it. Again, just to be very, very clear though, this is not a rule. Quite often, if you'll see a setup like this and price just goes through and just carries on, don't simply take a trade off a trend line just because it's hitting it. You're not always sure if you drew it correctly, first of all. Secondly, there's no rule that says if it hits, it needs to turn back. Okay, so that's very, very important to understand. But if this does hit a trend line, or if price does hit a trend line or a channel that you've drawn in and the channel looks good, price is behaving, if you get an entry on whatever strategy it is that you're using, take it. That's the time that you don't need to think about, should I take this, should I not take this? You shouldn't do that anyway. If you have a strategy and it's giving you an entry, you should be playing those entries. That's what we need to do in any case. But these are will give you a little bit of a more higher probability of actually winning your trade. Okay, so yeah, and it's a real pity. There's nothing that's trending upwards, really. With price, or there's no real downtrends at the moment. Okay, so this is a fairly decent trend here. Let's have a look and see, because sometimes price moves erratically. But how would we have drawn this if we were in an upwards direction? In an upwards movement. Where do we draw our trend lines? So this is going to happen quite often. We have a trend line, yeah? Let's make this nice and thick, make this red. Okay, so as I remember what we just discussed, right? So we said we're looking at higher lows and higher highs while price is moving in a direction. So price was moving upwards here, it kept making higher highs and higher lows, but it stopped here. Okay, so after this, it started making lows or lower highs, and then we had lower lows. So where do we draw this? How do we find this? How do we determine which peaks peaks are we going to use to draw a downwards trend line or a downwards channel? It's going to be exactly the same as an upwards one. Okay, so we were looking at the lows here. So if we're looking at the last low in a downwards move, we're going to look at the last high of an upwards move. Okay, it's that simple. I was on, which one was I on now? Yeah. Okay, so we look at the last high. This will be the last high of price. We could actually consider this one. Technically, it will be this one. So sometimes you're going to get that your trend lines look like this. Now this doesn't really make sense. If you look at it, we see that it was broken. Let's clone it and see what would have happened if we made a clone. Remember, we would have started here, and when price made this high, we would have drawn this in, and that would have been the low. So sometimes this is actually a good example of how this is not law. Sometimes we will get that price does weird movement like this. Okay, and it just kind of doesn't make sense. It's not sticking to a channel, it's breaking through, it's breaking up. Then we just ignore it. Okay, we don't use it to try and find trades. Okay, so once it starts doing this around a line that you've drawn in, just delete that line. It's not, I kind of want to say it's not valid. And then just start looking for new areas where it makes sense. And let's see if this was a beautiful channel. Oopsie. Okay, so there was a lovely channel that price adhered to. And then while it was doing this, we could have looked at what you call it. We would have drawn, although we would have only drawn this in here. So this, we wouldn't have any trades based on trend lines in this drop here. So invalid. We can look at this, for example. It's really, really important though to understand. Oh, I can actually use a channel. I forget about this. It's just super important to understand that I want you at the bottom. It's really important to understand that this is not a law. Okay, so trend lines will oftentimes work, or especially channels. I love using channels because once price gets caught in a channel, and it happens often but not always. If it gets caught in a channel, I know I can start looking for trades, and then especially then, like we're on the 1 minute here. So once price was going up, and we had this would be our second touch area. So only we could have looked for sell trades there. We could have looked for buy opportunities here, and let's look at those two examples quick while we're busy. We that area, and then again this area. So there was nothing really on the 1 minute. On the 1 minute chart, there was no way for me to determine really determine if I had any entries in these two areas. When it almost touched the bottom here, and when it did touch the top here. On the 1 minute chart, there's no way for me to determine entries. But if I switch back over to the 10-second chart, and I start looking at what was happening, I could see divergence here. There was a lovely divergence on the RSI. We did have slight divergence on the stochastic in this area here. So there's opportunities to get trades in, especially if you keep an eye. If you draw your trend lines and stuff on a higher time frame, and you trade on a lower time frame. If you want to trade on 1 minute, draw on 5 minute. Look at areas on 5 minute, or maybe even 15-minute charts, or maybe even 1 hour. Draw those areas in, because I really find that if you draw on a specific time frame, it's really easy to time your entries on a lower time frame, but still using the same technical or the same areas, the same support and resistance areas. But it's easier to time your entry on a lower time frame. But you'll definitely need to just have a look at your strategy, whatever strategy you're using. Sit down, have a look, and see how you can, how technical drawing can help you. Trend lines are just basically diagonal support and resistance areas. They act the same. They behave the same. A lot of people have used them, and a lot of people love them, but a lot of people also avoid them because they struggle. A lot of people struggle with determining where the lines are supposed to be drawn. Okay, so and once you understand that, as soon as price is turning, you use your new lows and highs when in the newly formed trend. It's super easy, really. It takes a little bit of practice, but yeah, it can definitely help get a little bit of an edge in finding entries, or at least identifying areas where you could get where your strategy could fire, and you find higher probability entries. Okay, guys, I almost forgot. Those of you watching, I have a code here for you guys. So if you guys are trading with PO Broker, they're my broker of choice. The reason being that I do not have entry delays. It's one of the few brokers I know of that doesn't have entry delays, so it makes trading easy for me. So if you guys are trading with them, and you can use you can then use draw 80 to get an 80 deposit, 80% bonus. So if you feel you need to use that, do so. So yeah, I almost forgot about that, but let's see what happens here. Okay, so I'm not going to take a trade here, but I want to switch to, this is the channel that I drew quite a while ago. Let's go to the 10 seconds quick and see if we got a DI spike or if we get some divergence on this area or on this line that I drew in quite a while ago. And we're just going to see strategy to finish setting up, and in the end, because I jumped the gun, my strategy ended up not giving me a signal and I lost that trade. Okay, we're breaking through now. Okay, let's just switch back to 1 minute. We're breaking through, but remember what I said. So oftentimes it will bounce, but oftentimes if it does break through, it will come back for a retest. Let's see what happens. It might not. There's no way of telling, but we could see price come back for a retest. If it does, we know we have a sell opportunity. Okay, so this area of this line has been broken. It was a beautiful line, so I considered I considered broken. And we're going to see if we might maybe get some hidden bearish divergence, which will be a beautiful time to take another entry, especially if it happens here. If it comes back up to retest this area here. But like I said earlier, oftentimes it doesn't. There is no law for price behavior. Just because it broke doesn't mean it will come back for a retest, but it often does. And that's why we, that's the reason I know that I need to keep an eye out in this area. This is an area of interest for me. So unless price just keeps going and going and going now, which let's see on the 1 minute, if this should be this, yeah. Okay, so this is like a second candle. There's still time for it to come up and do a retest. But it looks like it might not. Let's see, we did have an interesting level here. It looks like this is the retest. Okay, so it is pushing up, it is pushing down. Okay, so oftentimes it will behave, or sometimes it won't. And if it doesn't, the way it is right now, the price is not behaving, not according to my trend lines anyway. So we're not seeing the retest. We might see it in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it doesn't, it takes a while. There's no way to know. The only thing we can do is be patient and wait for it. But you do know that when it does break like this, I knew I had to pay attention, because I might get a hidden divergence entry, or I might get a DI spike on the ADX. I might get, my RSI might give me an entry. You never know. But yes, I hope this makes sense. I hope I hope after this you guys can, after a little bit of practice, confidently draw some trend lines, get used to how they're working. Especially a trend line by itself is fine, but especially once you see price being caught in a channel, it gets beautiful. And you will oftentimes also see, just using horizontal support and resistance areas, price also gets caught in sideways movement. This also happens. So when price is moving trending in a direction, I usually look for hidden divergence. And when price is caught in a range, in a horizontal channel, quite often I find that my ADX, my DI spikes on the ADX will give me a lot of good entries. So it takes a little bit of practice. You're gonna have to practice a bit drawing it, spotting your highs and lows. But if you stick to your highs and lows, last low of the last trend, or last low, if it's a bearish trend, the last low of the trend. If it's a bullish trend, the last high of the trend will be your first anchor point, and then just in the direction, if the new trend line is moving down, you're going to use your second high. If price is going up, you're going to use your second low as the next point. We do have something here. Let's see. Okay, so we have the the stochastic is nice and low. We've got the RSI hitting the middle line, and it's on this, and it's going to be a sell. Okay, so that was the retest. I took this trade a little bit late. I should have taken it a bit higher, but this is probably the retest, and it should push down from here. Let's see what the 10 seconds look like. Nothing really on the 10s, no real entry on the 10 second. If this does push up here, we're probably going to see some divergence forming. Although I think it's going to go down from here. But this would have been the ideal entry spot for me. I did get late into that. Did get into that trade a bit late. Yeah, we're going to see the divergence. Such a pity. This would have been a good trade if I could have gotten in at the top. But it's okay. We're going to see a push, and we're probably going to see divergence form, and I'll take another sell. Tempting as soon as the stochastic crosses down now, because we do have valid divergence as it is. If the stochastic keeps going higher, it's not going to be valid divergence, but at the moment it is. And we're not breaking this trend line, so this is just a retest on the 1 minute, although it might be waiting for me now. Okay, so the stochastic is unsure what it wants to do. What's the time? No data. Okay, so not it, no DI spikes, no divergence, so no trade. Okay, I think this is a good place. We've been going for a while, so I think this is a good place to stop for the day. We covered channels. We did have a look at channels, and we did have a look at channels and trend lines and so forth, how we can use them to just identify areas of higher probability trades. If we get entries from our strategies, whatever strategy it is we're using, if we get entries from them, especially on a trend line, it's probably going to be a higher probability trade than it would have been if it's in the middle of a channel somewhere, or not even close to any support and resistance. Okay, guys, thank you so much. It's been good. And I'll see you guys on, I believe it's Thursday. We'll have another stream, and as always, guys, please trade safe, trade smart. Those of you with PO Broker, there's your code again, draw 80 for an 80% bonus. And I will see you guys on Thursday. Have fun.